So yeah, no, this is not going to be another Easter video or necessarily a bunny video, but I consider that there's an animal transformation in this movie. I would at least wear the bunny ears for a little bit. Um, so this is going to be my review of The Emperor's New Groove, which came out in 2000. It's the next Disney movie. Um, as I said earlier in I think it was in the Dinosaur and the Fantasia 2000 movies, I did say that I might go on a slight break because I kind of like backlogged some of the Disney movies, and now I'm caught up on them. Or now I'm to the point where I'm recording them again since I got some other stuff out of the way, and I've got some of the Digimon stuff taken care of and got a better recording schedule for some other things. So yeah, I'll be doing the Disney movies again for a little while. Hopefully gonna try to finish them up in this run, and we'll see what happens from there. And that will result in, well, I have not seen Raya and the Last Dragon yet. That will happen. I just have not done that yet. And then, of course, when I get to that, I will do a review of that. I may watch it one or two times just to be a little more familiar with it since I haven't, since I haven't seen it yet. And so this, of course, will be about The Emperor's New Groove. Last year was actually the 20th anniversary of The Emperor's New Groove. So that was kind of interesting. Actually, one of the reasons why I was like, well, yeah, The Emperor's New Groove will be kind of a fun one to talk about is because my dad and I listen to NPR a lot, which is National Public Radio. For any of you that don't know what that is, if you're someone that's likes my videos and you're not part of and you don't live in the US, it's just like this, national broadcast system that we have that does a lot of different, like there's human interest stories, there's funny stories. One of the ones that we listen to is called Pop Culture Happy Hour, which is where they just every day or every couple of days or so they talk about a different thing in pop culture. Sometimes it's stuff to do with the Grammys or the Oscars, or sometimes it's to do with movies or TV shows or music or different things like that, or even books. We listened to ones where they talk about the Muppets, and ones where they talk about Chadwick Boseman back when he passed away, and different things like that. One of the ones that we listened to, I think the tail end of last year, or at the beginning of this year or so, was where they talked about The Emperor's New Groove because of the 20th anniversary of the movie. And they talked about how if this movie was being made today, it would not be made the same way. If they made The Emperor's New Groove today, they would be casting with probably a much more racially diverse cast, or a much more racially appropriate cast. There would be a lot more historical accuracies to it, a lot less. I mean, like, a lot of the humor might still be in there and everything, because that's one of the main reasons why I do love The Emperor's New Groove, is the humor that goes along with it, with all the memes that came out of it and a whole bunch of other stuff that came out of it, which is just so funny. And very much translates to a lot of different things. But so there's that and everything. But like, they talked about how, like, certain things still play as being very funny. Some things, nowadays, if they did it, would not be something that they would do in the movie, or it would be a much more culturally sensitive movie. Which I'm like, yeah, I can understand that. Actually, I actually need a little bit of a background thing to help with this besides just bunny ears. I was trying to remember if anybody in the movie actually gets turned into a bunny. I know there's someone that gets turned into a cow, and I'll talk about that later. But, of course, the main character is, of course, turned into a llama. I did not buy this. My mom collects random stuffed animals for, like, my nieces and nephew, and, this was in the garage, and we're slowly cleaning out the garage, and I'm using that for the Emperor's New Groove video. So we have Psychedelic Llama, or Garage Llama, whichever you want to call it. So I'm going to put this over here so you can still see it. That doesn't work. One moment. Better. And the ears are going to come off now. Yeah. Emperor's New Groove came out in 2000. It's, of course, based off the fable of the Emperor's New Clothes, of course. So the movie is, of course, about the self-centered Emperor Cusco, who is, of course, the emperor of the kind of the Aztec Inca type empire that they have going on in the movie. It's not extremely historically accurate, but they do have a fair amount of references to that culture. They use lots of backgrounds in the clothing. They try to at least make kind of a little bit accurate. Some of the different backdrops and backgrounds they tried to make very much look like Central and South America area. I think it's more the South America that they're referencing in the movie, of course. And so it's, it's the prince, and he has his, he's very, there's always a very interesting way to describe Cusco at the beginning of the movie, and that would be a jerk. Cusco is very much a jerk and a hole at the beginning of the movie. He gets, everything handed to him on a silver platter with the snap of his fingers. He, has servants that, rely, that cater to his every whim. He has his own theme song guy, which, if any of us could have their own theme song guy, I don't understand why we would turn that down. It depends on, I guess who the theme song guy is, and how much we like the theme song they come up for us. But of course, we just see him going about a normal day, and then of course we find out that it's not a good idea to throw off the Emperor's groove, and he, this old guy's there, and he bumps into the old man, and then, that throws off his groove, and then the old man gets thrown out the window. Feel sorry for the old man. And, Cusco is explaining that, I'm in this situation and everything, but of course at the slight beginning of the movie, we of course are introduced to the character being a llama. And we find out that, it's, him giving his, backstory as to, I don't deserve what was done to me. I don't deserve this at all. I was in the right. Everybody else was in the wrong, of course, is what we get at the beginning of the movie. And we see him being this pitiful llama at the beginning of the movie. And it is kind of a, it's a very, it's a Deadpool-esque way of kind of describing the movie, which is telling the narrative of the movie, which is kind of interesting. And long before Deadpool became anywhere associated with Disney. Even before I think Marvel in general became associated with Disney. Because that didn't happen until I think, what was it, like 2010? Something like that. Or 2009, whatever it was. But like, so we get those moments, but then we get, we're introduced to Yzma and Kronk, and of course, Yzma is the Emperor's advisor, is his head advisor, and she, of course, wants to rule the kingdom instead of having Cusco rule the kingdom. And of course, we get very glimpses into Cusco's head and like his opinions of everyone. As he looks and interacts with them, we get the explanation of, Yzma is, living proof that the dinosaurs once exist. And then, of course, we get Kronk, who is, of course, her, henchman. Henchman, whatever you want to say it is. And he is, the way that they described him in the bonus features was, Kronk is about as sharp as a marble. I'm like, yes, but he's extremely sweet and extremely nice, and those are his redeeming qualities. And he's a good cook. So we have Kronk there, we have Yzma, and then of course we are introduced to Pacha, who is the chief of one of the nearby villages, and he's summoned to the castle, to the capital, because Cusco wants to talk to him about something to do with his village. And Pacha's talking with him, and Cusco seems to be being rather nice to Pacha. And he explains that, well, your village is very important to us, and, where would you say you get, like, the best sun? And, of course, he has, like, the model of the village, and, Pacha's like, this ridge right over here, right on the other side of these trees. And he's like, good, that'll be exactly what I need for where to put my pool. Pool? And then, of course, you find out about Cuscotopia, which is, for all intents and purposes, yes, when Cusco is very much proclaimed to be a jerk. Because he's going to destroy Pacha's village, where his family has lived for at least, probably 100, 200 so years, depending on stuff. And, and does not care where they end up. And, of course, this just makes us, dislike, Cusco even more. We're supposed to dislike him quite a bit at the beginning of the movie. And he, he's gonna, doesn't care what happens to Pacha and his family, and Pacha tries to say, you can't do that, that's not right, and then of course Pacha gets thrown out. And of course, we have it when Kuzco decides to fire Yzma. Yeah, that doesn't go well. And Yzma, of course, gets very, very angry about this. And Yzma gets very angry about this, which I don't blame her for in the slightest. Admittedly, she is trying to, gain power that is outside of necessarily what she should be doing. But, I would definitely say Emperor's New Groove is one of those times where you kind of relate a little more to the villain character, or like the villain character a little bit more than you like the main character. You get Eartha Kitt, for God's sake, to play the villain. I'm like, I loved Eartha Kitt in this role. She did a great job. And of course, God rest her. And of course, I'll go over the cast at the end of talking about the movie. But of course, we have the moment, and I love this moment because I've wanted to do this too, where she's down in her kind of like lair area, and she's like, Kronk is helping her smash all these different busts of Kuzco with like a hammer, and she's just like one after the other after the other. And it's just so funny, and I'm like, yeah, I've wanted to do that too. We've all had bosses where we wanted to do that. We've all had coworkers where we wanted to do that. We've all been in situations where it's just like, I'm gonna go break something. I'll be back. Like you wander off, smashing, shattering, come back. I'm better. What were we talking about? We've all had those moments, I'm pretty sure. Or, even with family to a degree. But of course, then Yzma comes up with the idea of, I'll get revenge on Kuzco. I'll kill Kuzco. And of course, we go down to we have the whole, pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong lever! Why do we even have that lever? Which has been memed so many times. And of course, I love that bit. And of course, we have the roller coaster type ride, them going down to, her secret lab. And they're running around, and she's like, and this is basically the quote that I'm going to use at the end of the video because it's my favorite quote from the entire movie. It's Yzma going, how shall I do it? I know. I'll turn him into a flea. A harmless little flea. And then I'll put that flea inside of a box. And then I'll put that box inside of another box. And then I'll mail that box to myself. And when it arrives, I'll smash it with a hammer. Knocks over poison, kills Flower, or, to save on postage, I'll just poison him with this. Of course, her and Kronk are like, okay, we're going to poison Kuzco. Okay. And then, of course, we cut to that night, and we find out that, Yzma invites Kuzco for dinner, and Kronk is much more worried about the actual dinner itself than actually poisoning Kuzco, because Kronk. Kuzco shows up, and they're talking, and, Kronk is supposed to pour the poison into Kuzco's drink, of course, to, kill Kuzco. And, of course, we have Kronk going, oh, that's right, Kuzco's poison. The poison chosen specifically to kill Kuzco. The poison to put in Kuzco's drink. Kuzco's poison. I'm like, yes, Kronk. Yes. Kronk made this nice meal for Yzma and Kuzco, and at one point Kronk puts the poison into Kuzco's drink, and then he, tries to give it to Kuzco, and then it's like, is something burning? And Kronk runs off for his spinach puffs, and we just have this like awkward moment between Kuzco and Yzma, and it's like awkward family dinner time, where it's like where the boss comes to dinner and you have no idea what to talk about type thing, and we just have them sitting there, and they're just like awkwardly staring at each other, and Kuzco's like, so he seems nice. He is nice. Kuzco. He's in his late 20s. I'm not sure. So it's a whole awkward family dinner of like, you have to talk to the relative that you have the least in common with. And it's just like, just see that sky today? It was a nice sky. Type thing. And then, Kronk comes back and they're just like relieved that Kronk is back. And, he tries to give Cusco. He's like, looks at the poison and he's like, oh, I forgot which cup I put the poison in. So he takes it back and he, mixes all of them together and like redistributes it, which is just funny. And like Cusco and Yzma are just like waiting. And then he comes back and he gives Yzma and Cusco and himself drinks. And then he like whispers to Yzma, don't drink it, type thing. And like Cusco just drinks it all down. And like Kronk pretends to drink it, and then like Yzma pours it into a plant. Then of course the plant turns into a llama, which is funny. I'm sorry, the movie is more held together by gags in my opinion. It's still funny, but I more like the movie for the gags than anything. And it's not really a musical. We have a song at the beginning of the movie that's like Cusco's theme song. And then like at the end of the movie there's a reprise of that, and then there's a song over the credits, which I'll go over. But of course, Yzma and Kronk watch and they think that Cusco is going to be poisoned. And Cusco just like, looks like he died. And she's like, oh, good. Now we'll get rid of him. And then he sits back up and he's just like, well, that was good. And then like, he gets, ears and his neck gets longer and his hand changes into a hoof and then his face turns into a llama face and everything. And like Yzma is just watching this and so is Kronk. And Yzma picks up broccoli and she's like, hit him on the head. Hit him on the head. I love Kronk. Picks up broccoli. More broccoli? Yeah. I can do like the gags in the movie and I just find them funny. And he then, he just picks up the broccoli bowl and hits Cusco over the head with it. And then I love Yzma. He's a llama. He's supposed to be dead. Let me see that vial. As I said, Eartha Kitt did a wonderful, perfect job as Yzma. I love her. I definitely say that Yzma is definitely the funniest out of all of the Disney villains. Then again, a lot of the other ones don't necessarily aim for funny. Well, I mean, like, some of them are kind of funny. Hades is pretty funny. Some of them, on the other hand, are not. Like, Maleficent is not funny. Scar has moments. Jafar has a few moments, but I would definitely put Yzma as the funniest out of all of the Disney villains. And what ends up happening is, she looks at the vial and it's extract of llama, and I love Kronk. In all honesty, all of your vials look the same. You should think about relabeling some of them. And then they go, and then she's like, okay, take him out of town and get rid of him. And of course, we have the moment where Kronk is supposed to get rid of Cusco. He throws him into this, like, aqueduct water thing that's supposed to drop Cusco off the side of the mountain where the castle is. And of course he does that, and then we have the moment where like his shoulder angel and shoulder devil show up and they're talking, and I just love that moment. And Kronk's just like going back and forth between the two of them, and like they try to do the whole thing of the devil of course just wants him to let Cusco die, and the angel is trying to make him not do it. And of course we have the moment where the devil is like, I got reasons why you should listen to me, and he just insults the angel, and then he goes on, and then he hops down and he lands on the edge of this stone wall, and he's like, number 2, look what I can do, and he does a handstand with one hand, and Kronk's like, what does that have anything to do with this? And then the angel's like, no, he has a point. I'm like, a point about what? Which of course that alone is turned to I mean, most of the stuff that's memed is Kronk. But of course, Kronk prevents Cusco from falling off the side of the building, falling off the side of the, off the side of the mountain. And then, via things, he lands in the back of Pacha's cart, and Pacha works his way back to his village. And of course, this is when we're introduced to Pacha's family. We find that, Pacha has a wife. I think her name was, I think it was Chica. And then his sons, his children are, where did I put his children listed? His children are adorable. His wife's name is Chica. His daughter's name is Chaka. And his son's name is Tipo, and of course his wife is, pregnant. quite pregnant in the movie. I think this is actually like the first time, at least in a Disney movie, where a pregnant character has been shown, and it's not just like with Lady and the Tramp, where it's like we get the hint that, oh, she's pregnant, and then like we see like just the calendar flip by until she's giving birth. At least Lady and the Tramp kind of put in a few things, like you have to have the doctor come, and it's not just the baby pops up out of nowhere type thing. But like, so we have that, and of course Pacha is just trying to figure out how to explain to them that oh well, he's trying to figure out how to explain to them, her village is going to be destroyed in like 2 days. And he can't bring himself to tell him that, because he's just like, he sees how happy they are and his children adore him, and he's the head of the village and everything. And then of course I love his wife. She gets so annoyed at one point because Pacha just says, oh, the emperor didn't have time to see me, and she's like, I'm just I gotta go wash something, and she walks off to go clean something. I'm just like, hey, whatever. And, she seems to be a good mom. Pacha seems to, of course, be a very good dad. And we have it where Pacha goes back out, and he finds the bag on the back of his cart, and he opens it, and he finds that there's a llama inside of it. And then, of course, it starts talking, and then, of course, we get the demon llama moment. Which, okay, there was supposed to be, back when they were in development of the movie, they were going to have Pacha have more of an eccentric family, like a very eccentric father who was like an inventor, and like a next door neighbor that kind of just seemed to be like the typical hipster college type thing. And I'm kind of glad they took some of that out. The wife still seems to be rather level headed and smart, but we have like that moment, like in the deleted scene that they had on the bonus features, we have it where Pacha like hid Cusco in, this is like after he's found out about Cusco, of course, and he hides Cusco in like his son's room, and the son goes in and like sees the llama, and then like we just get this whole moment where we have like the demon llama, and like they're all running around, and like they do an explanation of he's a city llama, so he can talk. And like at one point we have the father says to Pacha, I know I didn't teach you everything, but I may have, or it's like, I know I taught you a lot of things, but I could have, I guess the one thing I never taught you is never bring a demon llama home. And I'm like, the scene itself is not worth that line, but if you could have found a way to work that line into the movie, I would have loved that. But of course, Pacha's freaking out, and he figures out, and like we have it where like, we have the moment where Cusco realizes I'm a llama, and then of course he's freaking out, and he thinks Pacha's the one that turned him into a llama and kidnapped him. And he's like, well, and Cusco's just like, well, take me back to my castle, and I can use Yzma's secret lab, and she can turn me back into a human. And and Pacha's like, build your summer home somewhere else, which you can't blame Pacha for that. He doesn't want to lose his home. He wants to stay here. This is where his family has lived for, a long time. And it's where his kids live now, and he doesn't want to uproot his children and his wife. And, we have, Cusco's like, I don't make deals with peasants. And of course we have that whole argument there, and Cusco goes off into the jungle, and then of course we meet the squirrel, Bucky, who is adorable. And from there we have it that Cusco gets chased by, I think they're jaguars, and then Pacha shows up and saves him. And then then they get looped around the branch because of Vine, the tree trunk because of Vine, and then they float down the river. And we have the moment where it's like Cusco, or like Pacha just like looks at the river, or like he's like, oh no. And we have Cusco on the other side just being completely calm. We're about to fall down a raging waterfall and probably die at the bottom, aren't we? Yep. Sharp rocks at the bottom, most likely. Bring it on. Again, it's, it's admittedly for the casting, for the attitude of the characters, they did a perfect job. They fought on the waterfall, they survived. Pacha has to attempt to do mouth to mouth / CPR on a llama, which of course freaks out Cusco. And then of course we have Cusco still being a brat the entire time about, well, when I get back to my castle and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And Pasha's just like, well, I couldn't let you die in the jungle, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to take you back because you're still going to build your freaking summer home over my house. And I don't need that. I don't want that. I'm going to protect my family. And no one can be angry at Pacha for this. Well, I'm sure some jerk people out there could be angry for Pacha about this, but, I'm not. The majority of people, I would hope, is not. And of course, we have it where they're, Pacha built a fire to keep them warm, and Cusco is being Cusco and being a prick, and he he goes off, and he's, at that night he gets cold, and Pacha is, of course, very nice, and he drapes his poncho over Cusco to keep him warm. And of course, I would say this is where we see a slight change in Cusco, but it's not, it doesn't last very long, because the next morning we have it where they're talking, and, Cusco pretends that he's going to, he like compliments Pacha's, poncho, and he's like, it's nice, and he's like, yeah, my wife made it. It's like, oh, she did a good job and everything. So it's just like this awkward moment again. And, we have the, he fakes the agreement that, I'll not build my summer house on your village. And then, of course, Pacha, works on taking him back to the castle, and they get to this bridge, which is in a very tedious place. And it's like, okay, well, it's like they're just talking and everything, just like kind of getting along. And then, of course, Pacha falls through the bridge and gets wrapped in the rope and everything from the bridge. And Cusco then he's like, well, why would I help you? I'm just going to build my house where I want to anyway. And he's like, you lied. We shook on it and everything. And it's, it's that whole thing, it's like the gentleman's agreement of, shake your hand and, yep, this is what we get. This is the agreement we made. Which, admittedly, contract in writing with witnesses is a better contract, but sometimes in some cultures, at that point in time, obviously, the handshake agreement was, the end-all, be-all type thing. And we, of course, then, Cusco falls through the planks, and then, of course, we have it where him and Pacha start fighting, which, again, I don't blame Pacha. And then, of course, the bridge collapses, and then, of course, they get stuck, in, like, the crevice type thing, and they have to, work together, to climb their way out of it. And then, of course, they still don't end up working together very well, and then they do end up getting out, and Pacha, part of the cliff's about to collapse, and Cusco saves Pacha. And this is where we do start seeing a shift in Cusco. And then, of course, they're still wondering about, and then, of course, we cut back to the castle, and we find out that, Yzma is, kind of in control now, and, she gives this beautiful eulogy for Cusco, and then, of course, she just sends everybody back to work, with, like, Yzma-fying the castle. Yeah, she likes purple, Cusco liked red. This is like one of the only red shirts that I have that's not Husker themed. Also has a giant A on it for Avengers, but also for Amanda. Nah, it's just for Avengers. And we get the moment where, this is when, Cusco or Kronk and Yzma are talking, and we find out that, this is when Yzma finds out that no, Cusco's not dead. And then, of course, they head off to go and find him because, Yzma needs Cusco dead, because if he comes back, he can, of course, claim the throne. Even if he is a llama, he can find a way to try to reverse that type thing, I guess, by forcing her or something. If anything, never mind. And, they go off, and of course we have it where Cusco and Pacha are still wandering around, and they end up, because, like, if they had gone over the bridge, it would have been like an hour to the palace. If they, now they have to go, like, the very long way around, and they end up coming to this diner, which is just funny because there's like this, it's like a Bob's Big Boys or whatever themed diners. It was like, Mutka's or whatever it's called, or it's like home of the mug of meat or whatever the case was. And of course we meet the waitress, who is fun and is just a character in and of herself. And of course we have, Cusco is kind of dolled up, wearing Pacha's, you know, poncho and like has like lipstick on and like curled his hair and is trying to look, you know, like a woman. And then Pacha is pretending that we're on our honeymoon. And I love the waitress, bless you for coming out in public, um, type thing. And of course they order, and you know she brings them their food, and you know, and like Pacha is just happy to eat, and he is, you know, he's enjoying the food. And Cusco, and I don't blame Cusco in the slightest when he's looking at the food because it looks like this giant bug that's been cooked, and Cusco's just like, no. And he goes off to try to talk to the chef, and he goes in and he starts talking with the chef, like, you know, it's like, could there be something else and everything? And Yzma and Kronk were wandering around in the woods, in the jungle and everything, and they interact with the squirrel, and we find out that Kronk can speak squirrel. We just learned so much about Kronk. He's doing like exotic bird bingo, and you know, like all this other stuff that he's doing. You know, he's doing his job to the nth degree, except being able to kill Cusco, and such. And you know, they interact with the squirrel, and then you know they find, you know, they make their way to the diner as well. And you know, Yzma and Kronk are sitting right behind where Pacha is, and Pacha hears them talking, and you know, they're talking about, you know, it was your job to kill Cusco, and blah 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 blah. And now we have to find him, and blah 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 blah. And you know, Pacha's just like, oh no, this is not good. And Kronk kind of tries to think that he recognizes Pacha, but he can't figure out where. And then, you know, Pacha goes to try and grab Cusco out of the kitchen, and from, you know, talking to the chef, and they try to escape, but, you know, Cusco doesn't want that. He wants to eat. And Kronk goes into the, Yzma's like looking over the menu, and she goes, is there anything on this menu that is not swimming in gravy? And Kronk goes like, I'll go ask the chef. And he goes in, and of course the chef just gets fed up and he leaves. And then Kronk has to become the chef, which is just funny because like there's the waitress comes by, and she just like lifts off this list of, you know, this you know, the order that someone made, and Kronk just like riddles it back to her with like the diner talk and everything, which is just funny. And then he just starts cooking, and you know, Cusco and Yzma keep coming in and out, changing their orders. And it's just funny just watching Kronk go back and forth, you know, just getting the food plattered up and everything the exact way it's supposed to be. And then, you know, Cusco goes back to sit, and Yzma goes and sits, and they're like, they both have their menus. And like, Yzma kind of sees Cusco, but she can't quite figure out that it is Cusco. And then Pacha tells the waitress, points at Yzma, hey, do you guys do the whisper, whisper, whisper? Oh, yeah, we do that all the time. And then, of course, we have the moment where I'm actually recording this on my mom's birthday. And it won't go up for a while, but I'm recording this on my mom's birthday at the end of May. And so it's like, we get the happy, happy birthday moment, which is just funny. And like, I've been in that moment, not the whole, why is this happening to me moment, because a while ago we stopped doing the, you know, it's like, if we told, you know, it's like, my birthday, my middle niece's birthday, and my brother-in-law's birthday all happen in April. And my brother-in-law's birthday was like 2 or 3 days before mine. And we did this whole, you know, we'll usually go to Red Robin around here, and we'll do, you know, birthday dinner there with you know, with my mom, and you know, and our dad, and our, you know, my sister and her family and everything, and we'll do dinner there. And sometimes we'll tell them that we're there for our birthday, sometimes we won't. If we do, it's usually we'll say we're there for like Tristy's birthday, and or for the older niece's or the middle niece's birthday, and then they'll give her, you know, a treat or something. Just, you know, usually the rest of us will end up getting, you know, ice cream anyway. Of some kind, but you know, it's like, you know, give the kid a treat, but we don't want the singing most of the time. But you know, they do that to Yzma, and that's just funny. And then of course, you know, Pacha grabs Cusco out of there, and of course we have the moment, and he's like, there's this woman in there in the sky, and he's like, wait a second, is this woman scary beyond all belief? Yeah, that's her. And Cusco, oh, that's Yzma and Kronk. I'm saved. And Pacha's like, no, they want to kill you. He's like, why would they want to kill me? And he, you know, leaves Pacha, and we see Yzma and Kronk leave the diner, and of course we have them talking, and Yzma and Kronk are just like, or Yzma's just like, if you had killed Cusco when you were supposed to, you wouldn't have to be doing this. And of course Cusco is overhearing this, And then he kind of wanders off on his own, and we have Yzma and Pacha go to keep looking around, keep trying to find Cusco, or sorry, Yzma and Kronk go off to keep trying to find Cusco. And, you know, this is kind of when we hit, like, kind of where it coincides with, like, the beginning of the movie when, like, Cusco's at his lowest, because it's like, he got rid of the one guy that was helping him. He can't trust he can't trust Yzma, and now he's all on his own, and he can't really find anybody else to help him. And, this is when we hit the, him at his lowest point again. And, the next day we get the shift, and he goes and he finds these, this group of llamas, and he's like, well, I might as well get used to being a llama. And he finds them, and he tries eating grass, which is just funny. And then, of course, he hears Pacha talking, and he sees that Pacha is like, this is like Pacha's herd of llamas. And Pacha is like, well, he saved my life. And just like basically telling the llamas the story of how he ended up with Cusco. And Cusco is happy to see Pacha, and Pacha's like, are you tired of being a llama now? And Cusco's like, yes. And he's like, okay, well, now exactly what we have to do. And like that night, or the night before, when Cusco was like at his lowest and everything, Kronk remembered, Pacha was the guy that was, he was like, Pacha was the one that had the card where the llama, or Cusco landed, and we have to find him. And of course, him and Yzma have made their way to Cusco's village, to Kronk's village, sorry. To Pacha's village. I know the names of the characters. They just get screwed around. They get to Pacha's village, and Pacha and Cusco have gotten to the village, and they're getting ready to, they have to run up to Pacha's house to get some supplies. And, they have, they make these two guys there that are playing, like, I guess, chess or whatever the game was that they were playing. It's like, hey, we just saw your family. My what? Yeah, your family. Wait, was one of them scary beyond all belief? Oh, yes. Oh, no. And this is where we get the moment where, Yzma gets tortured by Pacha's family, which is so funny. Which is just so funny. What ends up happening is, of course, they get to the house, and Pacha explains everything to his wife, and like Yzma had given the Chica this whole BS reason, and so I'm his second uncle's wife's cousin's great niece's sister's boyfriend's great aunt, or whatever the case was. She had made up for that joke. And I'm like, how would... Never mind. That doesn't even diagram correctly. It's like the joke from Spaceballs. I've seen Spaceballs. It's just that joke, and we have the moment where, Yzma is being demands to be shown around the house, and then, Chaka and Pacha talked, and she ends up, Chaka hit, it's Cusco with a frying pan, which is funny, which is like pre-Rapunzel, pre-Tangled frying pan slap, which is good in my opinion, which is still funny. I love Tangled. We'll get to Tangled eventually. But we have, Cusco and Pacha head off to get to the castle, and of course, this is when Pacha's family just kind of start torturing Yzma and Kronk. They lock them in the closet. They, basically honey and feather Yzma, and then she gets beat up by kids as a piñata. And Kronk is of course being very happy with the children and everything, and being very polite and everything, and it's like, well, Kronk's fine, but Yzma needs to go. And they're just going off and everything. And then of course Yzma and Kronk are making their way back to the castle as well. And we get the moment where it's like, where Cusco and Pacha went, there's like these red triangle, or these red squares or whatever, and then like now following Yzma and Kronk, there's like purple lines, and like Yzma and Kronk are just like, huh? Like looking at the lines and just like, eh. And of course we have them racing back to the palace, and like, Yzma and Kronk, get, fall behind, and Cusco and Pacha end up at the castle. And of course we get the, the lever moment again, which is funny. And it's Cusco gets dropped into the alligator, or actually it'd be crocodile pit. Well, no, it'd be alligators or crocodiles or caimans, depending on the circumstances. Because all of those are native to South America. But so and then they end up in the lab, and which is just funny. And of course, they're looking to try to find the vial that has to turn Cusco human again. And then of course we have the moment where like Yzma and Kronk are there, and it's just like, wait a second, how did you get back here before us? And of course we literally have the moment where they address the fact of how did that happen? And like Kronk's like looking at the map that was like, by all accounts, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, yeah. And of course they, and then of course we get the whole big thing where Kronk and Cusco are trying to get a hold of the or not Kronk and Cusco, Pacha and Cusco are trying to get a hold of the vial that'll turn Cusco human again. And, there's, Yzma has it, and then they try to get it from her. And then, of course, Yzma at one point snaps at Kronk and basically does the whole thing of, why did I think you could do this one little thing? You can't do anything right. And she just basically, like, chews Kronk out, and she's like, you know what? I never liked your spinach puffs. Never. And his angel and his devil are just like, oh no, she didn't. And of course we have the moment where it's like, well, what led into her chewing him out is we have it where Kronk's angels and devils appear after she tosses Kronk a knife to, kill Cusco and Pacha. And it's like, we have him standing there like, he's like, well, we did this happen, and then that happened, and this, and he's like talking to the angel and the devil on his shoulder, and Yzma and Cusco and Pacha are just watching, and Yzma's just like, and Cusco and Pacha are just like, eh. And they're just like, what is going on here? And then, she insults him, and then Kronk, and, it's just a full funny moments that, of course, happen with that. And then, of course, they get the vial away from Yzma, and then, of course, there's, she knocks more vials down to, confuse them, and then, of course, she calls in the guards, and then, of course, the guards all get turned into animals, and I love it where she's like, kill them! They killed the Emperor! And one of the guys was like, I've been turned into a cow. Can I go home? I love Yzma. You're excused. Thank you. And the cow leaves. And she looks at the others. Anybody else have a problem? Nope, we're good. And they just go off. I was just like, okay, does that qualify as an employee health day? I mean, he did get turned into a cow. And of course we get them chasing Cusco and Pacha, and Cusco gets changed into a bunch of different animals. He gets changed into a whale, he gets changed into a turtle, he gets changed into a little tiny bird at one point. And then of course he gets changed back to a llama, and he's like, yay, I'm a llama again! Wait. And of course we get the whole big chase sequence of, up around the front of the castle. It looks like a giant face, and of course we have them running around all of that. And, Yzma's there, and then Yzma gets turned into a cat because reasons. And it's just funny with Yzma turned into a cat. And of course, he has the, I can't do that voice. I cannot do that voice. I don't know if they just like messed with Eartha Kitt's voice in regards to just, in post editing, and then where they made her listen to what it would sound like, and she's like, is that my voice? Type thing, or if Eartha Kitt could just do that, which I would not put past her at all. Again, I love Eartha Kitt, and they go through all of that, and then of course Kronk, Cusco almost has the ability to get the vial, and of course you have to pick between getting the vial and saving Pacha, and he of course saves Pacha, and then of course the two of them have to work together again to get to the vial, and they do get the vial, and Kronk shows up and kind of saves the day, and then Cusco drinks the potion and he turns back into a human. And then of course we have it where now Cusco is of course a much better person, and he apologizes to the old guy whose name is, I think the old guy's name is Rudy. He apologizes to the old man and everything, and the old man's like, oh, it's not the first window I've been thrown out of, and it won't be the last. I'm a rebel. And so we have like Cusco being better there, and then of course we have Cusco talking to Pacha, and Cusco's like, you lied to me, and he's like, what? Yeah, I was all over that mountain, and I didn't hear any singing in regards to when the sun hits this ridge, right, these hills sing. And Pacha's like, oh. And Cusco is just like using that as a reason to be nice to Pacha, and say, well, I'm gonna build my Cusco-topia somewhere else. And they put Pacha's little house back up on top of the model. And Cusco and Pacha's like, well, you know, I think I heard some singing on the ridge next to us, if you're still interested. And of course, we cut to now Cusco is better. He has like this little tiny hut type of a thing on like the little ridge or the hill next to where Pacha lives. And of course, we have the moment where like we see the Cusco and Pacha are still friends, of course, and everything. That Cusco is a much better person now, of course, and Pacha and Cusco are friends, and Cusco is now friends with Pacha's family, and Cusco, Pacha's wife made Cusco a poncho with a llama on it, and we see the baby, and of course now Cusco has this new family, and then like extra family and everything, so he's actually a much happier person and everything type of thing of being nice to others is more important than only being selfish type of a thing, which is the lesson of that story. The lesson, of course, of the Emperor's New Clothes story is a bit different. It's be careful who you listen to type of a thing, because of course the Emperor's New Clothes story is of course these two salesmen show up and they claim that they can weave this thread, this clothing that only those who are, I think it was like extremely intelligent or extremely whatever the ruse was, and it will be and then we can give it to the king, and then he'll know which ones of his subjects are truly smart and everything. And of course they're not actually weaving anything. It's a complete lie. They pretend just to get money. And then of course we have it where the end of that is of course the emperor walks around without any of his clothing on because he thinks he's wearing these robes, and he realizes that he was the fool all along, and that he was the one that did the stupid thing. That's the lesson of the Emperor's New Clothes. Of course, the Emperor's New Groove is be kind to others type of a thing. Don't be selfish all the time. And of course, we cut to Kronk is now part of the what was it, the Chipmunk Scouts or whatever they were called, Woodchucks, whatever they were. And he, of course, Pacha's two older kids are in there, and a bunch of other village kids are in it. And, he's training them in how to speak Chipmunk, and it's like, squeak, squeaker, squeak, squeaking, squeakity, squeak, 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 whatever the lines were. And then, of course, Yzma's there as well, still as a cat. And, of course, Kronk has, Bucky the squirrel as his friend. And then, of course, that's where the movie ends. So the cast of the movie was, of course, we have David Spade as Emperor Cusco. We have John Goodman as Pacha. John Goodman would, of course, later be in The Princess and the Frog, where he plays Big Daddy, who is this very, very rich character who's kind of like the surrogate father figure to Tiana in that, and his daughter is Tiana's best friend, and I'll go over that more when I get to, of course, Princess and the Frog. We have, of course, have the amazing, the wonderful, the immortal Eartha Kitt as Yzma. May she rest in peace. We have Patrick Warburton as Kronk, and David Spade and Patrick Warburton were both later on a sitcom called Rules of Engagement. I don't remember what channel that was on. I don't remember if that was CBS or NBC or ABC, but whatever one it was. We have Wendy Malick as Chica, who is Pacha's wife. We have Chica. We have Kellyanne Kelso as Chaka, who is the daughter. We have Eli Russell Linz, whatever, as Tipo, who is the son. We have, and then of course there's the two songs, the Perfect World, which is the opening song that is Cusco singing and everything with the theme song guy, and then of course we have the My Funny Friend and Me, which is the end credits and such song, which the music for the movie was done by I think it was done by Sting. Because like they had such great success with like having Elton John help with like The Lion King, so they tried to do it with Sting and everything. The the songs are bad. I mean, they had been a lot. They had originally had a lot more songs in the movie. I think like Yzma was supposed to sing at one point, but we didn't really do anything else with that. There had been like an original version that was just going to be called Kingdom of the Sun, which was good. You know, a few other things that they were going to be messing with. There was going to be like a Prince and the Pauper type element with that. Um, you know, for Mark Twain with the Prince and the Pauper. Some elements that they were going to use there. Things got shifted around, of course, and of course we ended up with the actual version that we have. There's of course the Emperor's New Clothes, of course. Um, you know, uh, there's what was this one? Well, there's the reference to the fairy tale, but then of course there's the story of an emperor cured of his pride after living as an animal. Echoes the biblical account of Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 4 of the book of Daniel, which I'm like, um, sure, we can go with that. Um, yes, we have those moments. There's a few historical references in the movie, of course, beyond like the backgrounds and some of the artwork that they use in the movie is very much based on like that Incan and Aztec style that they had, of course. The Cusco is of course the name of the capital. And it's kind of based off of the Incan Empire, of course, in regards to the stylization of everything. Very long thin lines in certain cases, or very colorful a lot of the time, which I do think the movie is beautifully made. Admittedly, as I said, if it was made today, it'd be a lot more historically and culturally accurate, which is fine. Um, you know, you know, it's it's not too. There's not really too much else here in regards to that. There's not too much there. And then, of course, we get into the sequel. There is Kronk's New Groove, which came out in 2005, which I have seen. I've only seen it once. They got back the original cast for it. We still have Patrick Warburton as Kronk. We still have Cusco is, of course, still played by David Spade. We still have Eartha Kitt as Yzma. We still have John Goodman as Pacha. And it's more told about Kronk's story, about like learn about his past, we learn about his dad. His father is going to be coming to visit him soon, so he's trying to think of ways to his father always disapproved of Kronk's culinary interest and different things like that. He always just wanted Kronk to settle down with a wife, and he's trying to find ways to impress his father. And it's just kind of like via the story is told via flashbacks, and like we have it where it's like a 3-part thing. Like one of them was Kronk, Yzma tricked Kronk into trying to help her sell, who had turned herself into a human again, trying to help her sell like this, this like youth potion to like all the old folks to help them, get better and get her money, and then she'll give money to Kronk, and it's not a real youth potion, and Kronk ends up, we have the angel and the devil, I think, that show up again and help deal with that. We have, another one is like Kronk is still like the leader of the Chipmunks scout at camp, the junior Chipmunks, and we have it where he falls in love with this other camp counselor, Miss Birdwell, who is voiced by Tracy Ullman, and we have it where they kind of get along, and then via bad pranks that happen, they don't get along, and we get some problems with that and everything, and Kronk just kind of falls in love with Birdwell right off the bat, which is just kind of funny to watch. And then we have the third one is basically John Maloney, John Mahoney, who plays Pappy, Kronk's father, shows up, and like in all of the different flashbacks we've had of Pappy, he always seems to be this very big guy, and when he shows up, he's short. And Kronk had been working to try to find ways to impress his father, and each time it kind of went down the wrong way, and then he tried to do something, and then he still did the right thing in the end. And Kronk has been, since he no longer works for Yzma at the palace, he's been the chef at the diner for the past however amount of time. And he's a very good chef, and everybody there likes him. And the families come. Pacha's family comes a lot. Cusco, I'm assuming Cusco shows up every now and then. Cusco is not a huge part of this movie. He's like referenced at the beginning because he shows up. He gives a slight narration at the beginning. And he's like, yeah, no, this is not my story. This is Kronk's story. And we have those moments. As I've said, I've only seen the movie once. And what ends up happening is when Pappy shows up, Kronk tries to pretend with Pacha's agreement to a degree, and Chica's agreement. He tries to pretend that Chica and the kids are his wife and kids to Pappy, and then it's just funny. Pacha shows up dressed as a woman, and then they try to pass, she pretends to try to Pacha pretends to try to be Kronk's wife, but then they try to pass him off as the mother-in-law, and then a bunch of several of the old people show up trying to pretend to be Kronk's wife and or children, which is just disturbing. And then I think Cusco shows up at one point dressed as a woman pretending to be Kronk's either girlfriend or wife or whatever the case was. And so that's basically the only time that we really see David Spade or see Cusco in the movie. And then it just everything falls apart, and Kronk, has to confess to his dad of none of this is real. None of this is real. I work here. I'm a delivery boy and a chef, and I'm the chipmunks camp counselor and everything, and and I do this, and I'm really proud of that, and I love these kids, and I have these friends and everything, and and then they bring in Birdwell to show up and help with to actually kind of her and Kronk actually get an actual date, and they do end up getting married, and Pappy ends up being very approving of Birdwell and this other stuff because he's he kind of got over it's you're you, therefore I am proud of you type thing. It's just funny things, and we get Birdwell and Kronk get married, and then we get post credit scene that show, or in the credits it shows them poster pictures on their honeymoon at Pisa and Paris and Venice, which I'm those are on the other freaking side of the world. But sure, why not? And then, of course, we have it where the cast is the same. We have Patrick Warburton as Kronk. We have Tracy Ullman as Miss Birdwell. We have the kid as Yzma again. David Spade as Emperor Cusco. John Goodman as Pacha. Wendy Malick as Chica. John Mahoney as Pappy. And then John Fiedler as Rudy, who is the old man that got thrown out of the window in the first movie, and he's Pacha's friend in this movie. And then there's also the Emperor's New School, which came out in 2006, which is not a movie. It was a TV series that they did where it's Yzma coming up with this plan of the TV series takes place after the first movie. I don't know if it takes place after the first movie, but before the second movie. But Cusco seems to not be the nice person that he was the nicer person that he was by the end of the first movie so much in this one. And Yzma is just trying to, she finds a reason for why Cusco has to go back to school to try to get a proper education, or he'll be cut off from whatever money it is, so he has to go and live with Pacha and his family. So we have lots of moments where Cusco has to bond with Pacha and his family and his wife and kids and everything. And Kronk seems to be another student at the academy, but he still works for Yzma, so I'm okay, there's some continuity errors here. But Cusco makes a friend there, Melina, who he kind of has a crush on, and she helps him. Yzma is kind of the principal of the school under the name Amzi. yeah, Yzma backwards. So there's not really too much else there. I've never actually watched The Emperor's New School. I'm like, okay. Some of it they got some of the characters back, not all of them. I think they got Eartha Kitt back for Yzma for that, but I don't think they got David Spade back. I know later on David Spade has issues with Disney for whatever reason. I don't remember what, but he did. Um, but I think they had like a few of the other casts come back. I know from what I saw on the website that Fred Tatasciore played Pacha for I think like the first season, and Fred Tatasciore has voiced Hulk throughout several of the animated Marvel movies. He's very good at voicing Hulk. And not really too much else there. Outside of the actual movies or the TV series, Cusco pops up in House of Mouse a couple of times in his llama form. He's like in one of the Christmas one at one point. He's like, I don't want to be a llama anymore. When he's like crying and complaining. And I don't remember if like Yzma or Kronk show up, but like Cusco's there. They're not in Kingdom Hearts at all. Admittedly, I guess maybe like running around that type of the world in like Kingdom Hearts would have been kind of interesting, but like Yzma doesn't really seem like the type of villain that would be able to control the Heartless very well, so I wouldn't put that there. What else? Not really too much else there. They don't show up in Once Upon a Time as far as I'm aware, although that would be funny to have to deal with a talking llama in Once Upon a Time. At the point when I'm recording this, my mom and I are a fair ways into the second season of Once Upon a Time, where they're in Neverland and having to deal with Peter Pan and everything. So at the moment, I don't really have any amendments to make to the movies that I talked about, or to the previous movies that I talked about in relation to Once Upon a Time, but we'll see what happens with that. Although in my Pokemon Go, I actually am trying to evolve a Sylveon right now, or get a Sylveon right now, and I named it Rumple after Rumpelstiltskin, because of course during the course of the Peter Pan arc, the Neverland arc in Once Upon a Time, we of course learn a bit more about that Peter Pan is Rumple's father, and we learn more about Rumple's past and everything. But that's not exactly 100% how everything goes in the story. And Rumple is kind of technically half fairy pixie anyway, because his mother is the dark fairy. But that is a completely different thing that has nothing to do with this. So yeah, brain work. Disney moved. So yeah, not really too much else there in regards to the Emperor's New Groove in regards to in any other media that I'm familiar with. I mean, like they have like people dressed up as the characters at the Disney parks and everything, but there's not too much else there. The quote is going to be, of course, the quote from Yzma about how she's going to kill Cusco, because that is my favorite quote from the movie, and I love Eartha Kitt. I love her as Catwoman and Batman, and just so many other things that she's been in where she's wonderful. So that's basically what we got there. The next one. Okay, so here's a dilemma I'm at. The next one that I have technically on my list is the Recess movie for Recess School's Out. And as in based off of the TV series that they had. I'm trying to figure out if that is one that I want to do and do a review of here, which I do kind of do, so I might just do it that way. And then it would be that, or I don't remember off the top of my head what the next one is after that, but I think, or is it Lilo and Stitch? It might be Lilo and Stitch that's the next one, but I don't remember. But I think I will do the Recess School's Out just because it's a fun movie, and literally right now school just got out in my area, so yeah. So I guess the next one will be Recess School's Out, and we'll go from there. So although admittedly when I do get to Lilo and Stitch, that's probably going to be at least two videos in and of itself, between the original, the sequel, the other sequel, the TV series, and the Kingdom Hearts stuff. And yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. So that's what we got here. I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye! How shall I do it? Oh, I know. I'll turn him into a flea, a harmless little flea, and then I'll put that flea in a box, and then I'll put that box inside of another box, and then I'll mail that box to myself, and when it arrives, I'll smash it with a hammer. It's brilliant, 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 I tell you. Genius, I say. Or, to save on postage, I'll just poison him with this. Be careful how you treat people so nobody wants to turn you into a llama. That is the exact answer to this movie. Bye.